Okay, yeah, sorry.
I would like to call to order the joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency for March 29th, 2011. May we have roll call for the council?
Council members Raymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here.
And could we have a roll call for the agency, please?
Agency members Raymond.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Friedman.
Here.
May we have your report?
The agenda for the March 29, 2011 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, March 24, 2011 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Before you today is a public hearing, Director of Community Development regarding Wilson, Maryland Lofts project located at 111 East Wilson Avenue and 215 North Maryland Avenue. At 1A is agency resolution to certify the MND as the lead agency. At B is council resolution to certify the MND as the responsible agency. C is council resolution to approve a disposition and development agreement and health and safety code 33433 findings. D is agency resolution to approve a disposition and development agreement and health and safety code 33433 findings. E is council resolution to approve cooperation agreement conveying property from city to the agency. F is agency resolution to approve a cooperation agreement conveying property from city to the agency.
Thank you. Mr. Starbird?
Yes, I go to Phil Lanzafame, Chief Assistant. Phil?
I'm going to open the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Ms. Chair, members of the Redevelopment Agency. Last week you approved our southern anchor, the Museum of Neon Art, southern anchor to the Art and Entertainment District. It was a little bit of a different agreement, ground lease, but we're focusing now to the north and looking at the Wilson, Maryland Lofts. This is for property at the corner of Wilson and Maryland. As I said, this is what we envision as the northern anchor, coupled with the Alex Theater in creating a real draw to the Art and Entertainment District and a benefit to downtown Glendale. I would like to, during our presentation, we'll have the developer introduce the project to you, show you rendering. I will come back, give you some of the highlights of the business points, and then we'll ask you to approve the business agreement. What this doesn't have yet is the design, the final design of the project. That will be coming back to you at a later date. There's also, want to make sure that we have all of our the neighbors, both to the north and to the west, that we're addressing issues that they have. So that will be coming in the future. But before you today is the business agreement for this project. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mark Nathanson, who is one of the partners of this Maryland Wilson's Loft project, representing Mapleton Partners, as well as the Lemley family that will be doing a joint venture. Mr. Nathanson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, City Manager, and the City staff. My name is Mark Nathanson. I'm Chairman of Mapleton RDS Real Estate Group. We've been in the real estate business for over 20 years. We own and operate over 3 million square feet of properties throughout the western states through 70 mixed-use retail and residential projects, including projects in Glendale and Pasadena. I'm here to talk about a very exciting project to us on the proposed corner of Wilson and Maryland. This is a joint venture between Mapleton and Lemley Theaters. I thought this was the first time that the Nathanson family and the Lemley family had come together to work on a project. I had never met the Lemleys, even though I am a patron of the Lemley Theaters. But lo and behold, I did a little research in the archives of Variety magazine, which is online, and I found out in 1937, my great uncle and grandfather invested $2.5 million in Universal Pictures, which was controlled by the Lemley family. So this is not the first venture between the Nathanson family and the Lemley family. This is the second venture. It took us a little time in between, but I'm proud to say that the Lemleys and the Nathansons, subject to your approval, would plan to build 42 live-work artist lofts for professional artists, including but not limited to animators, painters, photographers, sculptors, graphic design specialists, that will be a premier quality space with large open space lofts, specially lit with natural lighting and artificial lighting designed to foster creativity for the inhabitants. Underneath the artist residence will be 5 Lemley movie theaters featuring award-winning foreign and independent motion pictures. We will build up to 10,000 square feet of retail space, including enough space for the Panda Inn to remain at that location. The beautifully designed 4-story structure will feature contemporary architecture, silver LEED certificate, and will provide public space for artists to display their latest creations. This project will be built in a timely manner by our long-term construction partner, Soriano Development Group, which has recently moved their corporate headquarters to Glendale. But the reason I'm particularly intrigued and excited about this unique project is it combines 2 interests of mine: our real estate expertise and my 40-year love of art. My wife and I have been collecting contemporary art for over 40 years. We helped found the Museum of Contemporary Art in downtown Los Angeles. And my wife, Jane, is a member today and sits on the board of trustees of both MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art, and LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. We're deeply committed to the art community on a personal level. The Wilson, Maryland Lofts will be the northern anchor, along with the wonderful Alex Theater, to Glendale's Art and Entertainment District. We couldn't be more excited about this possibility. We couldn't be more proud to be just a small part of this development renaissance. Thank you.
Jay Riesbaum.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. I'm Jay Riesbaum, Senior Vice President of Lemley Theaters. We are excited to be a part of the team that is bringing this exciting and innovative mixed-use project to anchor the northern part of the Glendale Arts District. We especially appreciate the opportunity to work with Mark, a true patron of the arts, as we would otherwise be unable to build a project of this quality. We regularly receive calls from cities asking us to bring a Lemley Theater in. We are very selective about the projects that we take on. We are here today in Glendale because Glendale is an intelligent and sophisticated community. Glendale is interested in growing an arts and entertainment district. Glendale is a proven area for film going, and we share in Mark's enthusiasm for the success of our unique arts-oriented mixed-use project, given our proximity to the historic Alex Theater, great local restaurants, and a plentiful parking supply. Lemley Theaters is focused on appropriately scaled, arts-oriented independent cinema. To some extent, we are the anti-megaplex. We are local, neighborhood. We bring cinema that is otherwise not available, and we hope to become an important part of the cultural fabric of this city. Our Glendale Theater will be a boutique, state-of-the-art concept, including 5 screens, 100% digital cinema, full stadium seating, high-back rocker chairs, and wall-to-wall screens. We will serve as a complement and an alternative to the existing Hollywood studio-oriented theaters that currently exist in Glendale. We are pleased to be a part of this innovative, premier artist loft project, along with what we hope to be a new and improved Panda Inn restaurant. We appreciate your consideration of our project. It is now my pleasure to introduce, to say hello, the owner of Lemley Theaters, Bob Lemley.
Hello, I'm here to sort of give a face that there really is a Lemley involved with Lemley Theaters. I'm the second generation. The company is now being run by my son. He's third generation. He's now today at the Theater Owners Convention in Las Vegas, so he couldn't be attending. The fourth generation of Limleys is about to graduate high school. My son has triplet boys, and they are already discussing who will take over operation of Limley Theaters. We thank you for your consideration on the project, and if you should have any questions for me, feel free to fire away. If not, go on with your business.
Thank you. We may have questions later.
Okay.
Next is Rodney Kahn.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are here in the City of Glendale, and I'm part of this development project team. Today we are here, and we know we're here to discuss business terms of this project. But what we wanted to do as well is provide you some visual aesthetics of what this project will look like. There's actually three components to the project. It's been touched on, at least two of them. One is the Limley Theaters, which in terms of art house theaters, they're the premier in Southern California. We will have 5 theaters that will have a total about 600 seats in them. They'll be on the ground floor and accessed off of Maryland Avenue. The second component of the project is the 42 live-work units that are being established for professional artists, and they will actually be contributing towards the arts and entertainment district. These units will range in size from about 600 square feet up to about 1,500 square feet. These are premier units for professional artists. They're going to have opportunities for the artist to display their art in public places, both in the open space and throughout the project, which is very different and very unique for a project. And then the last component, also on the ground floor, is the Panda Inn restaurant. And we're saying restaurant retail. The last time I came before you for the ENA, we talked about keeping Panda Inn in the city, and particularly keeping them at this site. And we have had negotiations with them, and it looks very good that they will remain in the city and be a part of this project. There are a couple things I'd like to talk about as it relates to the objectives for this project. We've already talked about being the northern anchor of the Arts and Entertainment District, absolutely, along with the Alex Theater. But what it also does is it will create a substantial amount of foot traffic for the businesses, for the shops, and for the restaurants in the area, in the immediate area. So folks that are coming to the movie theaters before will have dinner, or after have dinner or lunch. And then also for the 42 residential units, whether they're individuals or families, they also will be shopping, they'll be using services, and obviously eating at adjacent restaurants as well. The design of the project, which you will see in the future as we continue to refine it, we have our architects, Withy Malcolm, and they have been getting input from your city's design studio, along with looking at your downtown specific plan design guidelines. We think we're designing a project that the City of Glendale, all of the City of Glendale, is going to be very proud to call their own. Mr. Nathanson mentioned about our Silver LEED certification. This is a very environmentally responsible project. I would like to recognize and thank Barry McComb from the Alex Theater. They are a very important stakeholder in this area. They've been working with us in terms of their project location, their loading, our project location. We will continue to work with them in our final design, when we're under construction, and when this project is up and running. We see the Alex Theater as a partner with us now and into the future. We're hoping that we'll have joint activities that will benefit the Alex Theater and also benefit our building as well. Lastly, I'd like to publicly thank your city staff, because I think the city staff as a core worked very, very hard on this project. And I think it's a tremendous job that they did, and oftentimes it just goes without being stated, but we as a project team want to thank them publicly for all the hard work they do. I will conclude my remarks. We have some exhibits we can show you. If you have questions, we have our whole project team here to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bill?
Mr. Mayor, if you'll indulge me, the developer team got to talk to you about all the exciting stuff, and I just need to go over a few details, business details, not quite as exciting, but equally important for our record. Artie, if you could, maybe it won't be so bad if you can look at the nice rendering that they've given us. A couple of things that you're going to be considering. Mitigated negative declaration. We did environmental review on this project. We did it in-house. We looked at all of the elements that you would in any other CEQA review, environmental review, and we found that there were less than significant impacts in almost all categories, with the exception of utilities and services. That will be mitigated. What it does is increase wastewater flows within the Colorado flume. What we have done in this project, as well as others in the downtown, they will be paying a sewer impact fee to Public Works, and then Public Works will be able to upgrade that system as needed. We'll be asking you to approve a disposition and development agreement. We've talked a little bit about the business terms. We'll convey the property to the developer. The developer will be responsible for building. The agency will also provide up to $1.5 million as reimbursement for things like fees, demolition, and off-site improvements. The project site will be accepted as is. The developer doing their own due diligence. Important point that we've been putting in all of our agreements, the developer has agreed to maintain a jobs program. So before construction starts, they'll start coordinating with our Verdugo Job Center and try and place people in construction sites, and then afterwards, if there are any positions within the project, they would be announced and promoted from the Verdugo Job Center. Before we convey property, as I said, we're not, this is the business deal, there's not the design. Before we convey property, the developer must get all his entitlements from this body, design review, any sign variances, a development agreement or covenant because of the use of the lead incentive in our downtown specific plan. Health and Safety Code, the California Redevelopment Law requires that before we lease or sell property, we do a summary report to identify the costs to the agency. These costs total $1.852. Those were our direct costs in acquiring the land and the assistance that we will provide. The estimated value at its highest and best use is also required. We have appraised that at $2.265 million. You also look at the fair reuse value. That is the reuse after you put in all the conditions and restrictions on the site. We have concluded that fair reuse value is a negative $1.517 million. And then finally, the law asks us the consideration that we will be receiving. The consideration is equal to or more than the fair reuse value, and we have determined that through our appraisals and the business terms. Finally, one thing that we haven't touched on much is parking on the project. The parking for the residential portion will be in the Exchange Garage. We'll have a parking agreement with the developer to begin, if these do become condominiums, with the Homeowners Association. They will be required to lease 70 spaces in our garage. They will begin at the monthly posted rate of $60 per month. They will pay whatever the monthly posted rate is It is capped 2% per year cumulative, but generally speaking, whatever our posted rate is, that's what they would pay. The lease term is for 50 years. It is for the use of the project residents, and we will be asking them and doing parking management to control, make sure that they're parking there and not using other spaces for the general public. We're asking them to use our specifications for equipment so that it will tie in with everything else we're doing with the garage. The city will maintain the garage as it currently does with the rest. The developer finally can't assign this to anybody else. We'll be paying one parking fee each month, so we're not getting 42 different people clogging our traffic and transportation. Finally, there are cooperation agreements that we're asking you to approve today, and that is for the transfer of land from the city to the redevelopment agency. That concludes staff's report and the developer's presentation. We're here for questions. As I said, the developer here, folks from planning and development staff as well.
Let's go to the public speakers, and then we'll open it up to questions or comments. Richard Bennett, followed by Eileen Erickson.
Good afternoon, members of the Redevelopment Agency. My name is Richard Bennett. I am a long-term resident of Glendale, and I am pleased to talk about my impressions of the Laemmle Theater and hope to persuade you slightly. One issue, or one potential issue, is we have a lot of theaters in Glendale. Why do we need another one? I guess my thought would be the Laemmle Theater is unique. It is different. It is not just another theater. My wife and I, when we go to the theater, exclusively visit the Laemmle Theater in Pasadena. Unfortunately, Mr. Weaver. They are a unique show. If we want to find or see an independent movie, an art movie, a foreign movie, or documentary movie, virtually the Laemmle is about the only place you can see that. And I thought if I could give you some illustrations of how the Laemmle might be a little bit different than the shows that we currently have in Glendale might be helpful. So what I did is I looked today at what the shows, the Mann theaters in Pacific were showing, and I looked at the Laemmle showing, and I'm going to quickly go over some of the movies to hopefully give you a feeling for why they might be different. I'm going to start with several of them that are running either in 1 or 3 times at the Glendale shows, and I'll go over the names and at least very briefly what they're about. First one is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roddick Rules. It's a movie based on comic book adventures of a 6th grader. Second movie is Red Riding Hood. It's a girl's sister is killed by a werewolf, and the family hires a very famous monster hunter to help them out of the situation. The third movie is called Battle, Los Angeles. It's a global offensive by an unknown extraterrestrial. Fourth movie is Rango. It's an adventure about a chameleon in the Wild West. A fifth one is Paul. It's a comedy about UFO and aliens. And the sixth one is named Beastly. It's about a New York teen who transformed into a hideous monster in order to find love. So those are showing at least from 1 to 3 times within Glendale, and there's other shows obviously, but I just sort of picked out some of them. Okay, at the Laemmle, and this is the Pasadena. This is the one I would go to. I picked out a few also. The first one is Jane Eyre, which I hope you recognize as a classic novel by Bronte. A second one is Of God and Men. It's a story about Trappist monks that takes place in Algeria. It was the winner of the Grand Prix prize at Cannes. Cannes is, if not the most famous, one of the most famous festivals. Grand Prix prize is the second prize. Incidentally, the first prize was given to a movie called Uncle Booney. That's running only at one show in all of Los Angeles, and that's at the Laemmle Theater. And the last one is a certified copy. It is a movie that includes Jeanette Bouchat, who won the Best Actress Award. So what I'm hoping to show is that there is a difference between what we have here in the Laemmle Theater. It is not a zero-sum game, and to maybe take a little bit of what Mr. Draymond mentioned before as his new slogan, I think Lemley rocks.
Thank you. Eileen Erickson?
Good afternoon. I'm Eileen Pollock Erickson, and I represent the owner of the property on Brand adjacent to this building, Lemon Properties. And I'm probably a little premature, but I'm just wanted, and it looks like a great project, by the way. I have no objections to it. But I want to be sure that our businesses, which are Glendale Jewelry Mart and Farniente Restaurant, do not lose access to loading and unloading so they can conduct their businesses and so they can have a proper rubbish removal and disposal and full access to their properties, after the project is built and during construction. So I'm hoping that that will be monitored closely during the design phase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry McComb?
Good afternoon, members of the agency and City Council. I'm Barry McComb. I'm the Chief Executive of Glendale Arts, which obviously manages the Alex Theater. I'm back before you today to once again voice our support of this project. We certainly believe that a independent and art house movie theater in close proximity to the Alex is very complementary to what we do. If you look at the demographics of their key target audience and those people who tend to come to performing arts events, there's a huge crossover there. And we would certainly see ourselves trying to segregate our marketing efforts with theirs once the Lemley Theater opens. As we've previously talked about in the past, we also have hopes that we'll be able to possibly undertake a Glendale Film Festival at some point that would incorporate both the smaller theaters that they have and, of course, the larger Alex Theater. However, in my role as the steward of the Alex Theater on behalf of the city, I do feel a need to just bring to your attention that the current development of this project, as it's also presented itself with past projects considered for the site, does pose a potential impact on our current abilities to load in and load out shows. While certainly this is a concern of ours, I am pleased to report that from the very beginning, the developers project team's been working very closely with us, and although you're not looking at the design aspect of this project at this point, we certainly are pleased with the direction that things are going, and I feel very assured that by the time you see a final design, that we'll have that issue properly mitigated. So once again, on behalf of Glendale Arts, we're very supportive of you approving the next step in this project. Thank you.
Thank you. John Gantis?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the City Council, members of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Chair. My name is John Gantis, and I'm here on behalf of Farniente Restaurant. The owner's representative quite accurately set forth one of our major concerns, and that is that we have access for purposes of rubbish ingress and egress. Currently, if we look at the rendering that's up there, it appears that looking, I suppose, to the west, there is what appears to be an alley, which is not really an alley, but it is an open space that provides access, and access also from Maryland Avenue, which allows for a free flow, and most importantly for us, the fact that we have valet parking in the rear of the building. In reviewing some of the renderings and some of the discussions, it's my understanding, and I want to be sure, and we want to be sure, that the ability to maintain the access to the rear of the building where our valet parking is unobstructed, certainly through the construction and after the construction. It appears that that's the case, and that hopefully we can work out some way that there would remain some sort of access off of Maryland Avenue to allow for that free flow, so that we can continue to offer to our customers the very important parking that is the really at the heart of our business, and actually at the heart of the business of the Alex. A lot of our customers come in for dinner at Farniente, and then proceed to the Alex at night and use our valet parking, which is, of course, promotive of our business, but also promotive of the Alex. Our concern goes on into the completion of the project, and that staff and you all keep in mind the very important role that Farniente plays. You know, my wife has a favorite song. She teaches parent education at St. Bede, and her favorite song is "Make new friends but keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold." We're the old friends, and we would like to be given understanding of this. The project is beautiful. We think it could be a positive in the area, but we don't want it to be a negative for us. So we would ask your indulgence in that, and we look forward to being able to work somewhat to allow us to continue that. Thank you very, very much.
Herbert Milano?
Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, and the Redevelopment Agency and city staff, my name is Herbert Milano. I'm not a resident of Glendale, but I do own property within a couple of blocks of this site. And also for a very long time I had my business at 114 North Brand, which is the Exchange. So I have a significant amount of experience with regard to the issues about parking. First of all, I'd like to say that for many, many years, even though I resided in Glendale, nearby, and I had my business, I walked to work, I usually wound up in Pasadena for my entertainment. And for a long time I wondered what's wrong with Glendale in not having a cohesive vision with regard to all of its entertainment, dining, and the various different cultural events that a city like this should have. So to that extent, I applaud you in moving in that direction of really creating a cohesive vision. But I've been here long enough to know about what happened to the Exchange as it failed and it gave way to the Marketplace, as it failed and gave way to the Americana, and now we have this new vision. And I'm not too sure that we're still looking at the whole comprehensive view of the city as opposed to a very segmented approach. I hope it is no longer that way, because all of these failures are basically hard on the businesses that establish themselves here. My issue has to do today with regard to the parking spaces. The spaces that are being taken from the Exchange parking lot, 70 of them, less the parking spaces that are now surface parking next to the Panda Inn, they are going to be gone. And of course, we know that there's probably going to be a future demand if something happens to the current theaters at the Exchange. I believe that Glendale has an insufficient number of parking spaces that eventually causes an overflow that flows right onto the residential areas where my tenants live. And it's becoming progressively worse. I think that the redevelopment agency should reconsider, and maybe not just the parking issues, but also the enhancement of parking that may be needed, just as Burbank has done, in making parking truly accessible to any business in sufficient quantities. We just don't have enough of it. And oftentimes the parking structures that are being, or that have been created, are slowly but surely being given away to other entities. I think that the redevelopment agency should consider a major parking structure, perhaps on the corner of California and Maryland, where that surface parking area is now, because there is a significant need, and we need to control the overflow and the congestion that is happening, the lack of parking that is now impacting the residents of the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards from the public. Therefore, I'm going to close the public hearing, subject to reopening, of course, if there's a request for further testimony. I'd like to go first on this, and just like to thank Mr. Nathanson and the Lemley for getting together for the second time. I'm tempted to ask you how your great-grandfather's investment turned out in 1937, but that may take some extra research to do. I think the Lemley Theater coming to Glendale is great. and I relish the prospects of having a Nathanson development. Visions of his Verdugo Gardens still dance in my head as I pass the 134 by Central. That's a great project that should have gone through. But I don't want to get too carried away with myself and my desire to bring in such two great entities into the city. I am deeply concerned about the parking issues that we have here. The mitigated negative declaration report, the environmental report, I do think is flawed with regard to the parking impacts. We're giving 70 spaces reserved in that structure. Per code was going to have us put 310 spaces. That project, were it to be parked to code, would be 310 spaces. Add on to that the loss of 45 spaces that was already being used on that parking lot. That's an impact of 350-some spaces, which I think is a huge impact. And I don't think you can just point to a report saying, well, the exchange is it still the exchange parking structure? Okay. I was going to call it the creative district parking structure. But the exchange parking structure, just because there may be some spaces available, I think in no way translates into those spaces being used by the tenants, the moviegoers, and the guests of that complex. It's not just a simple matter of counting spaces. And the spaces that we're counting are only 70 spaces. We're not counting the availability of what code would have required, which would have been the 310 plus the 45 spaces that we're taking out. What's going to happen is those people that are, first of all, if you've got a car and you're one of those 70 spaces that you've got your monthly pass to, great, you're going to park there. But your second car is going to be parked on the street. It's going to go into those neighborhoods. They're certainly not going to pay extra for a monthly pass in the exchange lot structure, which is a terrible structure. I don't know how that was designed. I know there were some constraints, but it's difficult to get into. It's not well lit. Oftentimes it's dirty. The elevators are slow and graffitied up. I just don't think we can tie in the availability of physical spaces, take a snapshot, and make the next assumption that, oh, well, the visitors are going to all use that lot, because they're not. They're going to be using the neighborhood streets, and that neighborhood area is severely impacted. That's the problem that I have with this project. You know, it was seeing that the code figure of parking, 310, plus the 45 that are being taken away, really made an impact on me. Now, what happens if those 310 and the 45 seek parking in the exchange? Well, that structure is filled up, folks, maxed out if those number of cars park in there. What does that bode for the rest of our development? We are thinking of something for the man theaters. So I don't think that the environmental report accurately reflects that. Can this be overcome? Maybe it can, but you need additional mitigation efforts. And we don't have any in there other than saying we're going to give you 70 spots and a gate arm that goes up and down, and you park on the lower part of the exchange parking. For many occasions, we as a council have criticized and vilified previous city councils for what they did to Central Glendale and South Glendale. And we've said, oh, look what they did. They just jammed it up and they didn't put any parking in, and look what they have now. We ridiculed them and we said they did not have the foresight. Look what they've created. I don't want to be that poster child in 5 years when this gets filled out and the neighborhoods are overflowing and the residents are screaming at us for not incorporating enough parking into this project. So I have a definite problem with the mitigated neg deck. That's my big beef. Question to staff: are we incorporating any parking in lieu fees that we just passed last week? That we debated and said, well, we were trying to avoid this for people coming to us and getting exemptions and all that. We were going to put a parking in lieu fee of what was it, 17,000 or something per unit? 24,000? Is this development going to pay those? No, they're not going to pay those. Is this development going to pay the park impact fees? That is included in there. So, I mean, here we are, we're making rules for everyone else, but when we see a really good use that we like, Emily and Nathanson, I love you guys, but I also have a duty to the rest of the city as well. So we're exempting them from those fees. We're totally going backwards on what we said we were doing and what we thought was fair and right. How can this be solved? Maybe you're going to have some very strict permit parking. Maybe you're going to have something that will protect those neighborhoods from the overflow of the moviegoers and the tenants in that area. Maybe that's a solution. But it's just simply not addressed in the EIR. That's my problem. That's my dilemma. Great use versus impact on the neighborhood. So that's what I'm thinking, and I wanted to get that out there so I could hear from you guys. Tell me I'm wrong, or tell me I'm oversensitive to the well, not you, Mr. Starbird. I'm going to call on you last. I know you're for this project, and you're a great advocate, but
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to respond to the issue of parking, at least let you know what we did as we began this process to look at the issue of parking. It was actually the very first issue that we sat down with our traffic and transportation folks to take a look at, because frankly, it concerned all of us, wondering if this project would work in the downtown area. I mean, I'm a great champion for Lemley and the housing in the downtown, but parking was one of the very first concerns that entered our minds. So we didn't walk down this road just saying, well, it'll all take care of itself as long as we can fit the 70 spaces in exchange. No, we looked at the loss of the surface parking, the possible demand during peak periods of the theater, and the ongoing needs of the housing, and had your transportation staff look at every lot within a convenient walking distance of this location to survey it during those same peak periods to make sure that we weren't putting an undue level of demand on that parking. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody will go to the Orange Street Garage as the first alternative to park, but the Orange Street Garage is an alternative for patrons of this neighborhood. So in looking at those numbers, your traffic and transportation staff's conclusion was there is more than adequate parking available for patrons, and even excluding the spaces committed to the housing, there is adequate parking. They frankly were not concerned at all about the additional load that this will place. So it was on that basis that we prepared the environmental. It wasn't being a cheerleader for the project. I do think it's a very good project, but we did enter this process with some level of concern about whether or not the parking would actually work.
Well, I guess it's with that analysis that I do take issue with. So let me go to Mr. Quintero.
Okay, I hope to incorporate in my comments some of your sensitivities to the project, Mr. Jerry. And like you, I'm very, very excited about this project. Yes, the movie theater, it's actually one of the few theaters that I attend. I used to go on the west side on a regular basis. So I'm very excited about having Lemley here. And it is going to be, I believe, a different audience. There'll obviously be some crossover between the other screens here in Glendale. But for the most part, I think there's a specific type of persons that go to the Lemley. And it will be a regional draw. There's no question about it. People living on the other side of the 5 freeway, let's call it that, from Echo Park to Hollywood, et cetera, they're sure to come to this theater. I don't think they're going to go all the way to Pasadena or to the west side. And as a result, there's no question in my mind that the restaurants and businesses surrounding the location are going to benefit. And it's also going to do a lot for the neighborhood, not only restaurants and businesses, but just the overall. I mean, what are we looking at today? We're looking at an older building that's housing the Panda Inn and a surface parking lot. I mean, that's exactly what we have on that corner. The artist lofts, I think, are going to be a great draw. I think it's going to bring creative people to Glendale. People that perhaps aren't going to be so tied to cars and would be more likely to either take public transportation, ride bicycles, just do something other than commute. I can't, begin to think that someone would rent a unit in this location and somehow have that person commuting to, other parts of Southern California. I don't think that's going to be the type of person that's going to rent these units. Now, let me say this. I just returned from an international conference where there were people representatives from all over the world, from Western Europe, from Latin America, Canada, and basically the focus of this conference was buses, trains, and bicycles, and how to coordinate that type of activity. So for me, this is a step in that direction, a step in the direction that all of the major cities in the world, all of the premier cities in the world seem to be working on, a lot of them with a tremendous amount of success. So it's time for us to do the same thing. We can't have this car culture around our neck. Yeah, this is for Southern California. This is somewhat of a unique step, but it can be done. And quite frankly, the onus is on the developer. If people are not satisfied with the idea of parking in this public structure, then he's not going to be able to rent the units, or if he does, he will have to lower his rent. It's going to work or not work in the private market. And it's a developer that's really taking the risk. I know he's done a similar project in another part of Los Angeles. There are a number of different parking structures nearby. Orange Street Garage is unfortunately still practically empty. Then we've got and that's an alternative to the Exchange. It's a much nicer, much better laid out garage. And we've got the empty surface parking lot across the street on Maryland, which conceivably someday could be turned into a multi-story structure. So yeah, there's some risk. We're taking some risk, but overall I think the development, as was mentioned previously, being an anchor on the north end of the entertainment and arts district, I think is going to be tremendous. We've got the former electronics store site that we're going to have some downtown housing. We've got the hotel coming in a little further up Wilson. And then the other housing project off of Central. So I think we're finally, in spite of the economy and the kind of drop that we took, I think we're finally starting to see some activity, which I believe is starting to have people like Mapleton and now Lemley come to Glendale and start to pursue their development properties. So I'm very excited. I'm very happy that we're at this point, and I think it's going to be a very, very positive situation for everyone, including the businesses surrounding the area.
Ms. Friedman?
Well, I'm very much in support of this project. I think it's one of the most exciting projects that we have. I think for our local businesses, for our downtown, it could really be a game changer in terms of the type of people that we're bringing, the amenities that we're offering. I think it's going to be a huge benefit for the businesses. And I do know that the staff has been looking at the alleyway and the loading for the businesses and very conscious of that. So I think that all of their concerns are going to be addressed or have been addressed. And staff maybe can get together with them because they're still here and just, show them what we're planning for that. But to make the argument that because we're bringing hundreds more people a day to downtown Glendale, that's a bad thing somehow, doesn't make sense to me. And despite what one of the speakers said, I have never once driven up to any Glendale downtown parking lot and seen a sign that says full, ever. When we get to that point, we have 2 or 3 other open-air lots that are within a block of this site where we could put another parking structure. We have the open-air lot behind Damon's, which is really ripe at some point for being a parking structure. And we have the ability to build those structures, we have the land to do it, and when it's appropriate, we can take that step. But we shouldn't stop a project that's so beneficial as this just out of the fear that someday we may have a full sign in front of one of our lots. What has changed, and what people have to get used to as we grow our downtown, is that it's not the downtown of 15 years ago where you could drive down Brand and easily find a parking space right on Brand Boulevard. But what I think people are starting to get used to is we have these lots that are very convenient. The Orange Street lot is a beautifully designed lot. It's easy to park in. There's always spaces there. And it's very close to all of these. It's within a block. And certainly having that type of municipal public parking lot system has only helped areas like the Santa Monica Promenade, Old Town Pasadena, San Fernando and downtown Burbank. These are all areas that don't require their businesses to provide that on-site parking, but instead have conveniently located multiple municipal lots where people can easily walk from those. And instead of just being able to park at the Lemley and maybe never seeing anything else, they're then forced to pass Farniente and all of the other local businesses that hopefully they will patronize. I've been to the Lemley in Pasadena many times. They have no parking, not one parking space for that building, and it doesn't stop their customers. And it's much more of a challenge to find parking there because there are no public parking lots than it is in the downtown. So if we feel that the spillover parking is a problem for the neighborhood, we can implement permit parking, but I think more helpful would be to go, as we go forward with our sign program, to show people where those lots are. That will help a lot. As people get used to using those lots, as their customers know where the lots are, I don't think that many of the people going to the Lemley are going to mind walking, a block or less to park conveniently. I think it's a lot harder to drive around a neighborhood and try to find on-street parking than it is to go into the Exchange parking lot or any of those parking structures. And we do have the ability to build more municipal lots when we need them. And to me, that's a high-class problem. I will hope that we have that problem soon. I think every single business in the downtown hopes that we have the problem where we want to start building more municipal lots because we have so many people who are patronizing our downtown businesses. This is going to be a real anchor for the Arts and Entertainment District. It's going to keep people here. It's going to bring people here. It doesn't compete with any other movie theater that we have. Hopefully the Panda Inn will have a spanking new, bigger restaurant because I love Panda Inn, and I think a lot of people in Glendale clearly do, so we'd love to see that stay. And I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Draymond. Since he thanked me earlier and acknowledged me earlier, it's only fair that about 2 years ago, one of the local residents, when Mann closed, people started suggesting that maybe we could move a Lemley in because everybody wanted a Lemley here. What people don't realize, and what I've since learned, is that Mann Theater is just obsolete in terms of movie theaters. No first-run movie theater is going to move in there because it's just kind of beyond salvageable. Lemley wasn't interested, but Mr. Draymond persevered, and he didn't take no for an answer, and I think he hounded you all. But instead of turning on some kind of a block caller feature on their phone, they started listening to him and got together with Mark Nathanson, who's one of the premier builders in California, and an art lover, who had this idea for this unique project, and they were able to put it all together. I think it's very exciting. I think it's really going to be a huge benefit for the downtown. In terms of the risks of the parking issue, there are some risks, but I think that we have the ability, by building a new lot if we need it, to really kind of mitigate all of that, and it's a risk well worth taking for the amenity that we're going to be getting for the city. Thank you.
Mr. Draven.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Hearing still open? Or I don't remember where we are.
If staff answers it, we don't have to open the public hearing, only if it's a public member.
Actually, it's. I have a question for our folks from Lemley.
Then I reopen the public hearing and call them forth.
while someone from Lemley is coming up, let me just mention that a comment was made during the public hearing that we have a lot of theaters in Glendale. Well, the fact is we don't. We have the Pacific Theater, and I'll get to the Mann Theater in a moment, but that Mann as an entity is going away. And the question is not if, it's just when. So we don't have a lot of theaters in Glendale. I just wanted to make that clear. But my question to the gentleman from Lemley is a lot has been bandied around about what your demographic is. What is your demographic?
The demographic, we've never really done formal surveys. We're not that kind of a company. But you can tell our demographics are highly educated. Generally, you would say they are above average economically, better educated. They are an adult audience. We, for the most part, don't program what you'd call kid stuff. Although occasionally we will play a film that has a broad family appeal, but that's not our primary demographic. We play a lot of the films that would never play at the Americana. And they are popular films among an adult audience. Now, we may also play some of the same films that might play at an Americana, but they would be the films that cater to the adult audience. And believe it or not, that adult audience prefers to see a film at a Lemley theater where they are surrounded by other adults, as opposed to going to a big megaplex where they are continuously surrounded by a teenage and younger audience. They feel more comfortable with an audience of their peers. Hopefully that answers your question about it.
It does. Okay, anything to add? Okay. And then one other, let me see if there's anything else I have for Lemley. Yeah, that is my only question for the good people from Lemley. So thank you very much.
Sure.
Who can answer?
Close the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry. All right. Can Mr. Lanzafame please explain for those looking in? I think we know this, but there's been some kind of confusion in the community and in the newspaper and so on about the fact that somehow Mann Theater is being displaced, or that Mann Theater now has competition. Mann Theater, which is an amalgam of two other entities, is going away. Can you explain that?
Well, in the Exchange, they have theaters in the Exchange and in the Marketplace. The 10 screens at the Exchange, their lease expires, I want to say it's in July or August of this year, maybe even sooner. They have elected not to renew that lease, and so they will be leaving the building as an entity.
Well, more than that, they're leaving this planet as an entity.
They're leaving the planet,
but they're not just leaving the Exchange. Mann Theaters are, as an entity, is going away. And they've been buying their way out of leases and letting their leases expire. And as Councilmember Friedman, thank you, Phil, and as Councilmember Friedman pointed out, the Exchange itself is not, I mean, the facility is obsolete. It's obsolete not just as a film exhibiting space, but also it's obsolete from the standpoint of air conditioning and heating and traffic flow and pedestrian flow and all of those things. Actually, I'm sorry to do this to you, Mr. Lanzafame, but how many theaters are in the, you said 10, correct? That are in the Mann complex?
There are 10 in the Exchange complex. There's 8 in the original building, and then 2 screens.
And how many seats total in that?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, 100?
No, it's
100?
more than that. It's probably They're probably, say, 300 seats per screen.
Right. I'd say that's a good average.
Yeah.
So you're looking at very large.
Right.
And so would you say that the things we've been discussing for that man site for the future are a higher use, parking-wise, an equal use? Because those theaters at that time, when they were brought in, that was considered a very intensive use. And we are losing those theaters. So we do have capacity. And the way it was described to me is not just that we have parking capacity, Mr. City Manager, but that we have multiples of parking capacity in this area. And I think this map tends to point that out. Let's see. I think it should be pointed out how many theaters. It's 5 Laemmle theaters. But what is the total number of patrons at a time? Seats?
There are between 500 and 600 seats anticipated for the project.
For the entire project?
For this theater.
Right, exactly. For this theater complex?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Well, I'm going to be supporting this, and this is a benefit to our downtown. It's a great complement to our downtown, and it's a perfect anchor for our art and entertainment district. It is going to be a terrific economic engine, not just for this district, but for the retailers in our downtown. And it's the same dynamic that you can see inside the Americana, frankly. People who go to the Pacific theaters, they don't just go in and go out. That's why there are restaurants there as well. People go in, they have something to eat, they have lunch, they go see an afternoon program. Or they stop for an early dinner and then see a movie. Or they come out of a movie and then go to have dinner. That is going to benefit the retailers in our downtown, in particular our restaurants, and in particular the restaurants in this area. Not to mention residents of these cinema lofts. So I think that is going to be another benefit. Pushing the parking out into the community, I don't see that that's going to happen. We have another surface lot that's literally 30 feet across the street. We have plenty of capacity in the Exchange garage. We have more than plenty of capacity in the Orange Street garage. Not to mention the privately owned public parking that is in the area. And the Lot 3 and Lot 2, which are just north of, not even a block north. So I don't think this is going to create a negative impact. Is it something we're going to watch? You bet it is. But I want to thank our staff for really moving along with this project. It has, as Councilmember Friedman pointed out, it has been some time since that phone call where I was able to track down a cell phone number for Greg Laemmle. Called him one evening, and lo and behold, he answered the phone, and which I was not exactly prepared for. So through all of this stumbling and bumbling, and you wouldn't want to move a theater to Glendale, would you? Anyway, that was the beginning of the discussion, and I'm glad to see that it has moved along. I think it will be a perfect marriage of independent theater, creative arts, and residential use. All of it small-scaled, all of it within the confines of a limited impact, but a beneficial one, I think, overall to our downtown. Mr. Mayor, I'm done with my comments, but I will be supporting this.
Ms. Van Meiden was grabbing my attention.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Chair, members of the agency, and the City Council. I wanted to put on the record, because this is not just a review of the business terms for the approval of the DDA and 33433 report. This is also, as you pointed out, a public hearing reviewing the mitigated negative declaration proposed for the project as described. I think it's important to note that based on the record before you, that the staff evaluating the project does not believe that there is a fair argument that the project may create a significant impact based on parking. And I think it's important to note also that from a CEQA perspective, parking itself is not considered an impact under CEQA. It has to do with transportation and traffic, circulation issues, and things of this nature. However, in looking at a project and whether or not it might have a physical impact on the environment, the issue can come up. So I wanted to make that clarification. Part of the bases that you see in the mitigated negative declaration to support their opinion that there aren't any mitigation measures required is because of this Park Once concept that is being promoted not only through our mobility plan but recognized in the parking literature. Once you park, then there's an internal capture concept that occurs, particularly with respect to mixed-use projects. Two, it's the availability of parking that has been discussed and is demonstrated in the mitigated negative declaration. Three, I've touched on, it's the project's compliance with the mobility study concept of using public parking garages, and their availability, again, is demonstrated in the record. Fourth, the particular demographic that has been identified for this project is not one that would generally generate large parking demand because of multiple bedrooms and families utilizing this unit. So taking into consideration the demographic of this project, that's something that staff looked at in terms of parking demand. There was a survey of availability of the parking, which again demonstrates the availability. There is nested parking available and required to be used under the parking agreement for the residents of this project, free to them with card key access, the finer details of which will be worked out prior to the close of the escrow anticipated by the DDA. And it's my understanding that the new code requirements that will be implemented via ordinance coming before the City Council will actually reduce the total number of parking spaces, that cumulative demand, that 310 parking spaces, which is a cumulative demand based on a desegregation of the uses rather than looking at them all together. So it's actually a lower number. We do give a credit for the 38 parking spaces on site, so the report does note that it's actually 272 cumulative code required parking. An exception will be requested as part of the findings for that exception that will be coming to you later in conjunction with the Stage 1 and 2 review. Will be a full and thorough evaluation of the availability of parking and addressing some of the concerns that you've noted that will tier off of and use the survey that was identified in the mitigated negative declaration. And then one final point, and that is that there has been some discussion about construction of future parking garages, which may or may not occur, but future mitigation isn't required for this project because that presumes that we're mitigating an identified significant impact. There is not an identified significant impact based on traffic, transportation, or circulation. So that would be not necessarily mitigation from a CEQA perspective, but certainly from an ongoing demand from the mid-brand area. So that is for purposes of the record on CEQA, again, not anticipated to be a significant effect based on traffic and transportation based on parking. If you have any questions, I'm happy to elaborate on that from a CEQA perspective.
Let me go to Mr. Weaver. And
I get to speak now? Good. Okay. Well, today I learned that I'm not a Lemley profile person. I like comedies and musicals. In these days and times, I like to laugh. I do like history movies. I watch the History Channel and Science Channel and stuff all the time. And I understand the Lemley, and I understand enough to know it'd be great to have it here. And if we don't do it today, the Lemley is likely to go to another city, which is a good stimulus to try to make it happen here today. Mark Nathanson is a good friend. We've lunched together many times. Usually talk about USC football. And the last time we talked, it was about this project, and I told him to his face I would not accept it. I haven't changed my point. I said the area south of the Alex Theater had to be master planned. Staff has told me it has been. Well, in my opinion, it has not. What we're putting in here is going to affect what's on Brandt. Someday, like it or not, the buildings fronting on Brandt between Wilson and the Alex are going to be redeveloped with no parking. That's for one. I saw something like this more than 2 years ago. Hotel going there, it was a box like this, and it was thoroughly rejected by the council or the agency. And I told him, because we have not master planned it. My colleagues have said we can master plan it later. Well, by God, I don't see how you can do that. I like the Lemley here, but under the right design and with the master planning done, and it's not going to happen. We're going to live with the results. I also said that I will not give up the public's parking. My colleagues were willing to do that at Salem with ADI, and I voted against that. We're now giving up parking here. And this, I'm sorry, even as an engineer in our traffic, that's a joke. I don't buy this, oh, there's plenty of parking. I've said recently that I drove from northwest Glendale by the Burbank border to the Eagle Rock border of Glendale on and never hit a single stoplight, hardly saw a single car, because it was 6 a.m. in the morning. I think it was on a weekend. What you're going to see here is during the lively hour is going to be like from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 9 o'clock at night. And there's no way that you can get a parking spot behind the carousel. You can't get behind the 24-hour fitness. That takes that out. You go across the street, the church owns half the lot, and whatever the church wants to build on their property, then that property is gone. So I look over then at the other side. Well, the Kaku, I believe it was the Kaku report of the mid-1990s said that the Orange Street garage should be behind Damon's and Porto's. So we built it to where it is today, and people at this time drive around the lot behind Damon's and Porto's endlessly to park because they won't walk a half a block to the Orange Street garage. Even though it says it should be built there, and I voted against the Orange Street garage. Wrong location. Today, the Orange Street garage, and I park in it quite regularly. I used to park on the first level. Oh, we changed some rules downtown. We said, okay, we're going to put parking meters there per request of the merchants on Brandt, because they said their workers were all parking on Brandt and their customers couldn't park there. So we put the meters on. I now park on the 3rd floor of the Orange Street garage. It's filling up, and that's just the west side. We don't have a parking garage on the east side. And you're going to, from what I hear, the Mann Theaters might be nightclubs. Well, gee, there won't be many people going into young, lively nightclubs, will they? Gosh, there'll be a crowd. If they're done right, there'll be a mob scene, and they're going to park in that exchange garage, too. There is not enough room. Well, after we put in, we find it, then we're going to go out and build a garage. How many multi-million dollars will we need to build a garage after we can find a site? We're talking years to do that. Let's see, what else did I write down? I think there should have been parking underneath. I don't know how it's going to go without. I think it is wrong. I do not have any plans to show the parking circulation. I'm to vote on something without knowing how Farniente, the jewelry store, and Don Cuco's, what is it, the tavern, whatever's in there, how they're going to circulate through, in and out, both during construction and afterwards. 2 lovely renderings, both of them wrong. was shown. This one's showing the Panda Inn on it. The one up here had a nice wall where the Panda Inn is. As I understand it, this plan is supposed to be over where the Panda Inn site is. So I even got a schematic that looks right. I just think it's wrong. But it's going to be probably 4-1 against me. I don't care. I think we're wrong, and if I live long enough, maybe 20, 30 years more, I'll see the end result if I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll come down here, stand at the podium, and apologize for my position. As of now, I think we're going the wrong way and not giving the right thought. And I think our traffic and parking department is off their rockers. I don't know what time of day they're looking at, but they're sure not looking at the time I go down there, because I can't get in any of those lots. So you're expecting all these other people, and you're telling them, well, you can walk a block down there in the pouring rain to your car. Or if it's baking sun, you can walk in the bright sun. It's okay. We're all young and healthy and willing to do that. False logic. Just doesn't buy. I've never seen housing built without parking. Here we're going to do it for the first time because it's so important to have Lemley, which I respect and greatly would like to have in Glendale, with the right design. So, Mr. Mayor, go ahead and take a vote. I'm voting no on everything.
I'm prepared to move the agenda.
I would like to, I have
Mr.
I don't need to, I've made my point. You've all made your points. Let's take a roll.
Does that mean that I don't get to speak, Mr.
You
Mayor?
can, but I don't care to.
I'm addressing the mayor, actually.
If you're going to counterpoint me, then I'm going to counterpoint you back.
Well, golly. Actually,
There's nothing wrong with that to a point.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's called debate. But
Go ahead,
that's,
go ahead.
if I may, my comment has nothing to do with you, Mr. Weaver. So,
Oh, bless you. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Going to get longer. I just didn't want a comment that was made earlier to slip by, Mr. Mayor, and it was kind of subtle, and it was made by Mr. Milano. He mentioned the exchange and mentioned that that was a failure. Then he mentioned the marketplace and said that was a failure. He said, then we had Americana, and now this. And the implication is that, even though he didn't say it, that the Americana brand is a failure. It is not. And I just want to say, just as a point of interest, from my point of view anyway, I can't imagine our downtown right now in this economic climate, in this recession, had we not built Americana at Brand. Can you imagine a collection of blighted businesses that were on those collective parcels without the economic engine that Americana has been, as difficult as it is, and as under capacity perhaps as the housing is right now there, although even that's debatable, had we not done that, and to slip that in amongst what we're calling some failures of design and retail really troubles me. So I just wanted to mention that. You were safe, Mr. Weaver. That was not related to you.
Mr. Weaver.
I sincerely apologize to you, Mr. Draymond. Mr. Milano was totally off base. I caught that when he threw the Americana in the middle. To him, the Americana has never been a success. It hasn't generated enough money, even though we built it knowingly not to make profits for the city. It's to be a public place for us. So throw that in, totally wrong. 100% agree with you, and I apologize.
Well, as long as we're going all over the map, think
Well,
of what
why not?
else.
Why
Think
not?
of what else we could have done with that land at the Americana. Okay, think of what else we could have done. And every time I hear people say, "Oh no, we didn't build it to make a profit for the city," what a bunch of crap. Yes, we did build that to make a profit for the city. So don't keep repeating something that absolutely isn't true. Go back and look at those meetings and then tell me that we didn't do that development to make a profit for the city. That's just ludicrous.
I stand by my comment, and the record will show it.
Okay.
I
So I'm ready.
stand by my position as someone who was not on the dais at the time. But
I'm prepared. What's at issue today is this project, and I'm prepared to move the items for the agency. Can I...
Well, before you do that, I've been meaning to get something off my chest. No. I just want to briefly reiterate my position. I deeply appreciate the architecture. I deeply appreciate the economic stimulus that the Laemmle theaters will bring to Glendale, as well as the quality and the commitment that Mapleton Real Estate will bring to the city. My problem is mainly with the parking. I wish we could make a commitment now to make some significant mitigation to the parking, such as they have in other cities, West Hollywood, Hollywood, Santa Monica, strict, severe permit parking to insulate the neighborhoods from any further deterioration. Folks, get out to and I've spent a few months in these neighborhoods lately. Don't ask me why. But it is near impossible to find a parking space on the street after 7 o'clock. It is just filled. You have to circle and circle and circle. Furthermore, I really think someone has to call out Bonnie Nelson, as recognized as she is as a mobility planner. I think her premises and her assumptions on parking behavior are wrong. And I think we need to wean our transportation staff a little bit away from her. Her concepts maybe work great in cities like San Francisco and Oakland, where they are more progressive, where they've got zip cars, where they can jump in and take a car, and they've got great bike lanes and bike facilities, as well as a much greater public transit role. Public transit is decreasing in the LA area, as a matter of fact. There's no better proof to the failed premise that she gives us is look at South Glendale. Her premise is that if you don't provide the parking, people will not bring their cars. People will find other ways. Well, we've had South Glendale situation of severely impacted parking for decades, and people are not seeking other means. They're just circling longer and longer, and we need to take a better look at at whom we rely on our parking issues, not just for this project. This is, we've discussed this to death so far, but there are other projects coming forward. Let's take a long, hard look at these premises for a local human behavior and local parking and transportation diagnosis and analysis. Mr. Quintero.
Well, let's just keep the ball going here. No, I just want to say I agree with you in terms of South Glendale and the areas around Stocker, where I lived briefly, et cetera, and where you're currently residing. I think the difference is this is a downtown project, so when we talk about some of the housing that we're working on in the downtown, I do think it's a little different demographics. And I would like to add, I'd like to see the development team work on some bikes, see what we can do in terms of, later on in the evening, we're going to actually talk about different bike racks and their design, and I think there should be some bicycle area provided for the residents primarily, because I think they're probably going to be shorter little sort of trips that they'll be taking around the neighborhood. So can I move the three agency resolutions first?
Actually, it would be better to approve the mitigated negative declaration first, the agency resolution as the lead agency, then the council, and then the others can be moved.
All right, then I will move the agency resolution to certify the MND as a lead agency.
1A.
Second.
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
No.
Carroll?
Yes.
Weaver?
No.
Chair Frieden?
Yes.
And then I'll move the council resolution to certify the MND as a responsible agency.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Weaver?
No.
Mayor Najarian?
No.
Okay, what can I move now? Can I move the council resolutions together?
Yes, you may.
All right, I'll move the council resolution to approve a disposition development agreement and Health and Safety Code 33433 findings. And also, would that be number 5 or number 4?
That's 1C.
1E as
That's
well.
1C and 1E.
1C and 1E.
I'm
C and 1E.
I'm reading from the wrong page. Why don't I say that? Then I'll move 1C and 1E.
Second.
C and E. Second. C and E. Like I'm at a craps table.
Second.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Mayor Najarian.
No.
I'll move 1D and F.
Second.
Agency members Raymond,
Yes.
Najarian,
No.
Carroll,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Chair Friedman.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adjourn for council?
So moved.
Second.
Council's
No.
adjourned.
To adjourn for the
Just a little
agency.
levity.
So moved.
Second.
Agency is adjourned.